Yeah, we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have my main man, Dan Armstrong, in the house. Dan's a specialist at symbolism and etymology of ufology. He studied the Pierre Sabak material. If you guys aren't familiar with Pierre Sabak, I have a video with him on my channel, and Dan's done like a lot of work on his work, and like this it's really interesting, it's interesting stuff because it shows how everything ties into like the etymology of words, how it all goes back to ufology, and I'll let Dan explain a little bit better, but for a little bit more of you guys to know, Dan's an avid researcher. He was a professional teacher for years, and he studied over in Asia, over in China. He taught, and and he's just a very intellectual, scholarly person, and he's a good friend. And Dan, thanks so much for coming back on, man. How are you?
Great, Rob. Thank you for the introduction.
But should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started. So, sure, I could just give a big update. I mean, I think some people may have seen my videos that I've done with you before. I did a little bit on the symbolism and stuff. So we can go in any direction with it. I got more than enough material to share. I got like these storyboards with all the different pictures and explanations of this stuff. So if you want, we can just begin. Sound good?
You took some weed, huh? I can tell.
What's that?
You took some weed?
Oh, you know it.
That's awesome,
You
man.
can't you
Uh,
can't be doing this stuff otherwise. All
yeah,
right.
I hear you, man. And if anybody's wondering why I have a coat on, you see the cold, the more the night it gets here in Pittsburgh, the colder it gets. And there's something with my studio where the heating's like broke or something. So I don't know what's going on. But
So which one do you want to start with, Rob? I'm gonna do
and if you guys could share this out to the Discord and Telegram groups, if anybody's a member of my Discord and Telegram groups, if you guys could share it out to there, that way people know.
so we can let the audience sees this right now, right?
Yeah, the audience.
Okay, so I'll let people choose which one they want to look at. Some of this we won't look at, but they can choose whatever one, and then we'll just explore it from there. How about, hey? We'll
If you
make it
guys
interactive.
we have the lion, the equine, Sybil the queen. We have the thrones of Victoria, Baldachin, cloning, shining, Paradiso. And which pick one, guys? Whatever one you guys want to see. What do you want Dan to get into? He'll get into it tonight. Um,
And some of them go together. So I can just start, which you can choose one, Rob, if you want, and
how
just
about
start it
Sybil the
off.
queen bee? How about Sybil the
Okay.
queen bee?
Okay. So that's good because we did a little bit about that one before. So Sibel is this goddess, okay, that I showed before when we talked. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh
So
yes,
that woman seated
I
on
wanted this
the
plate.
chariot. Hmm?
Yes, I wanted this plate. I remember this a little bit. Yeah, that plate is
Yeah.
so awesome, man.
Yeah. So let's pick up a little bit about the main symbols in this one and then how that relates to this other stuff quickly. Okay.
Okay.
So on the plate, so Sibel is with her consort Addison being drawn by a quadriga of lions. There's these dancers going around them called the Corybantes. Um, and they have the shields. The shield is a signifier, duplex signifier of a shield is also what we're looking at as a UFO to make it a very broad symbol for a moment. Now, I could explain and get into all the language that's involved, but we're just going to do it quickly, okay? So the main thing is looking at the same word for God is very close to the same word as shield in ancient Greek. And there's a reason why there's this. We're not just looking at them as shields, but also angelic carriers or vessels. A lot of this gets into things like we talked about the demiurge. So we're looking at a very Gnostic point of view for most of Pierre's works, but you know who the demiurge is, right, Rob?
Yeah. Right. The Demiurge was created by Sophia in the Gnostic texts. And then the Demiurge created the archons, right?
Yeah. So in this one, in this, oh, I gotta move this back. So in this one, the demiurge is here. I think the demiurge is a product. So it's Sophia created something without the blessing of the absolute, right? So anyway, it gets into this whole thing. I think Cybele is very closely related to Sophia. We have the corn down here, as I said before, is representative. Dagon is the word Dagon in Greek, which is relating to Dogon, of course, and we know that Dogon is related to Sirius and the dog star and all of that, right? So there's all of that symbolism. And then the big thing about the snake with the cornucopia, with the grapes, and the cherub representing that there's the two angelic types, right? The seraphim and the cherubim. So the humanoid and the reptilian side.
And that's a big part of Pierre's work. That there's these
That's
two different groups, the cherubim and the seraphim, that created humans, basically. The human
yeah,
angels, the reptilian angels, right?
right. And that there's the hybridization of it. So you got Cybele. So Cybele, I started looking more into the whole thing about Cybele, and there's this whole thing about her is like relating going back to ancient Egypt and everything. She's related to a shower of meteorites. And if you can see it here, it says there's many representation of her in the ancient world, but there was one that was more revered than the rest, and it was a meteorite, a stone goddess. The name means a falling down, a reference to extraterrestrial origins of its goddess. Okay. And that like ends up forming like the Roman culture as well. And they worship this bee goddess. Now, to look at the symbolism for a second, okay. If here's a thing of Cybele on a boat and she's being drawn in by this woman here. And if you look at it and you understand it like this, the whole thing with Pierre is about talking about the boats, right? Like the what he calls angelic carriers. So it can be a boat, a chariot, many different types of things are shown to draw angels and gods. And in this case, we have Cybele seated on her seat. Now, a person pulling a ship in could be a story for one thing, but on the other hand, it's also a mooring of a vessel or ship, religare, which is where you get the word religion from, right? So religion means to moor a ship. So what we're really looking at when we deal with the symbolism, especially when we're relating to ET's UFOs, is understanding what Pierre would call angelian. So when he's talking about angelian, he's talking about what is alien speaking. And we're talking more than just different words have different sounds. It's an entire logic and a way of thinking. So anyway, it goes into so many different things from there. Part of it ends up being that she's also related to Athena, Nike,
Wow. So,
right? This,
do you think the Greek gods were really demigods, or
yeah.
like aliens?
Well, that's what like Pierre would argue a lot um, through this, right? So you look at there's the demigods definitely, and then there's like the hybrid line that's used to like rule people, right, through the royalty and whatever. But yeah, so like even Plato is commenting that this Neith character, which is the Egyptian goddess who created the world with using 7 magical words, and she's also the queen of the bees and the crocodiles and reptiles. You can see that here. She was a war goddess of creation. So what I'm trying to get into is actually trying to figure out these different gods and seeing how many of them are actually just a recreation of a different god over different cultures, over different centuries. So it can go in many directions. What are you interested in, Rob?
I'd love to hear about that. Like, what? That's interesting. So, like, I mean, because I've always I thought that like some of the Sumerian gods' names got copied down into the Greek and the Roman, But
Oh, most definitely.
what I was gonna
Yeah.
say was like they would talk about like, and we can go wherever you want with this. But I was just thinking like, when you go back to like old Greek lore, I used to study like Greek mythology and stuff, and they would talk about the gods would, define the fates of men on Mount Olympus. Like they would gather on Mount Olympus, and like, they had some power where they could determine the fates of men, right? They had this like otherworldly, power. Like it's almost like they were described as otherworldly, but they were described as humans, like almost, right? But like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, I don't
Yeah.
know.
So it goes in many ways, but you just start when you work with the symbols, you have to be like it's a very strange journey. Um, because it starts to traverse very different cultures. So it's interesting, this whole thing with the whole reason why the the Romans ended up bringing, so the story behind bringing this um, statue to Rome of Cybele was ordered through the Sibylline text. I don't know if you ever heard about the Sibylline text,
No, what's that?
but they were like the sacred texts that the Romans would consult during national states of emergency and crisis. It would literally be a way of like consulting with the gods, would be getting advice from these books. And the Sibylline text, so there's this whole thing about the queen bee. It's not just like a random metaphor. It's like the Sibylline texts were written in what's called hexameter, which is like hexa is 6, so the same as like a beehive, so that the writing would look like a beehive. Uh, there's there's this whole relationship between the symbolism of these meteorites and bees and destruction and the flood and then the world that came afterwards. So yeah, it's so the interesting story is, so the Romans again have a shower of meteorites that are assaulting them. They're about to have a big war. I forget who it is. I think it's with Hannibal. And they consult the books, and the books say you have to bring the statue to Rome. So that's what this woodcut is commemorating. But it's not that they're just bringing it to Rome, they're establishing a cult, a new religion, right? Which she's like, and I'm going to argue through my things that related to Athena Nike, because Cybele is the same as Neat is the same as Athena Nike, we can also look at it related to, I get into this stuff on Queen Victoria, because Victoria means Nike means Victoria.
Yeah, victory. Nike means victory, right?
Victory, right? So on top of the Brandenburg Gate, we talked about this part before. There is this statue of Nike with a quadriga, and this quadriga of horses is, I mean, the symbolism goes extremely deep. It depends how far we go with it. I can show a little bit on the horses later, but that basically represents the mammalian species or mankind, also the cherubim, and the angel with the wings represents the seraphim. In this case, it's Nike, and she has her imperial standard there and whatnot. The wheels, even on the chariot, are representational of the Ophanum wheels themselves, that being the UFOs.
Wow.
Okay. So, what I look at is this whole thing with like, so if that's Nike, well, Victoria means Nike. Is there a relationship between Victoria, like Athena Nike, and Victoria, Queen Victoria? So that's what I started to look at here. And I did this stuff with Pierre Sabak. So he does this thing where you have the word thronos, like a throne. There's the different orders, right? And then it goes into the throne chariot. You see how the symbol changes? So you have the one symbol here
Yeah.
under where it says Victoria, it says you see the seat like that. And then you see the seat with the wheel, that's the throne chariot. So you see how the symbol is changing. And then if you go to the right, you have the raised platform or wheel. So all of these things relate to each other when it comes to the etymology that I won't break down into here because it takes a long time. We'll just do a scan of different things. But one of the interesting things you see every time you see this thing with it is you're noticing that there's lions on the throne, winged lions. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is the Queen Victoria statue in Hong Kong.
It looks rather dark, you know? Does,
Yeah,
does this,
I like it. It's a very moody photo. Um, it's taken at night. But what's interesting is so you have this raised platform, a raised platform. Well, a raised platform in itself is a dais, right?
yeah.
Which comes from dais, meaning table or platform, which comes from the medieval Latin discus, meaning table, earlier disc or dish. So you'll see that words like saucer, dish, etc. continue to, it's not just a modern invention of the word like flying saucer. It actually goes back to a very ancient tradition about talking about these heavenly vessels. Okay.
So that they've been here forever. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Like,
it's a hidden thing though. It's like they wanted to keep themselves hidden this whole time almost.
hidden in plain sight, right? So what's really neat about it to me is like you can see how ancient it is. It's about going back pre-Roswell, looking at what these things are. And it's really interesting. Like if you think about who Queen Victoria is, she is the Empress of the world. She is the Black Empress of the world. She literally controlled 1/4 of the planet's surface area, and I don't know how much of its population at the time.
You know what
So
I've
I
never
think there's this
understood?
whole correlation of like the colonization that you see, like there's this historical trauma that repeats. And I think the same historical trauma of like the British going and conquering the world is similar to what the whole UFO and colonization and invasion of our world is. It's this reenactment of these ancient plays of symbols between the gods and their interactions with mankind.
I want to ask you this question. This is a side note, real quick. Like, how do you think? I mean, because you're Canadian, you're under the British, like
Yeah.
they're under the crown, kind of, right? It's still right. Like, how do you think the British were able to like take over at that one point a quarter of the known world? Like, even going to some places like deep into India where Alexander the Great couldn't even take over.
Yeah.
And they were a
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think there was something to it. Like if you look at the back of this throne, you see there's a big V, and then you see there's the wheel, and then you see there's wheels within wheels. Huh? And wheels and within wheels, if you know the text, like the apocryphal text, like Ezekiel, are telling you like that's what the UFOs were, right?
yeah.
We're looking at the cogs of the wheels within wheels and the eyes within the wheels. And V for Victoria. V also, we can look at the ship that represents. So there's this interesting theme with Victoria and her thrones made of lions and conquering. She is a war goddess, right?
Yeah.
And it relates back to this stuff with Sibel. So then there's the stuff I can show with the lions, and then there's the stuff relating to horses and all the symbols as you sort of go through it deeper and deeper. And I can't actually get it into the right detail with something like this, but you start to see that there's this continued symbolic tradition. So, like with the horse, I look at like the horse is like equus, like is the Latin word for horse, right? And I'm interested in the whole thing about the horse and the blinkers and the horse representing, as I told you before, like mankind. That if we were to create a metaphor of the predator species that is parasitically hosting from us and um, understand it, our position would be best explained by this horse. So the symbol of this horse is not just a random thing. It's a mammal. It's used as a beast of burden. It also is a beast of warfare and other things, right? And so I look at this whole thing of like the horse and the control interface, and like, and you see down here it says both blinker and blind are also used metaphorically to refer to people with an overly narrow focus or an inability to see the larger picture. The term can be seen as implying a limitation or obstruction to sight or discernment. So
Wow.
I think that's really interesting. Looking at what we don't see. I have some like hip hop stuff like thrown in here, and that's too from like Wu Tang. But
That's
what we
cool.
don't see. Hmm?
That's really cool. Which do you remember which one that's from?
Yeah, the song Tragedy. It's done by RZA. So
Oh,
it's
I
like,
love the
here
RZA.
comes
He's
the
pretty deep
rain
too. You know.
again. Oh, he's so deep. He's a beautiful, he is a prophet and a poet, a metaphysical poet. Like if you look through this song here, for example, here comes the rain again, falling on your head like a tragedy, falling on your head, causing new emotions, not even the naked eye can see. And then it repeats, here comes the rain again. But what they start to get into is falling on your head. It's not the rain they're talking about. They're talking about the rain. You see, it's a play on words. It's a homophone. It's not a rain.
It's the
It's a
rain of
reign of terror,
it's the rain of
right? A reign of terror would be what? Well, it wouldn't be actual H2O. It would be a rain. So I look into this whole thing of the rains. Sorry, I haven't
you
locked
think
the
how deep do you
items.
think the RZA is in this stuff? How much do you think he knows?
I think they're very deep. They do understand the whole thing. Like look at it, Wu Tang Killer Bees. I think they understand the whole thing of the Beehive. A lot of Wu Tang music has references to Masonry in it. I've always been very interested in the occult and Masonic connections in with hip hop and the
Dude, that's
symbolism
speaking
of
my
that.
language. You're speaking. Did you know about Prodigy? Did you know about Prodigy? And that like he was
No.
going out the New World Order in the '90s, and that like he was like he basically he had this really weird dream where he had this like insect come in and like it like foretold like his getting sickle cell anemia, and then he got sickle cell and he was like dying of sickle cell. It's like Prodigy's a fascinating person to look into.
Well, even that song there, like that track, Tragedy, it starts off with like, talking about global viruses, infatuation with Satan, blah 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 blah, and it's literally describing the world to come, right? It's literally prophesying world like 20 plus years in the future. So I find that really interesting that the whole idea of prophecy, mysticism, I think there's a way, it doesn't mean somebody's in on it. I think they can be tapped into a higher source. They
Yes.
probably are groomed in some ways to learn that. But
Yeah.
so I look at the whole thing about, the marriage of the bride and the groom, the whole idea of the marriage, right? We marry something um, together. So we're also looking at the marriage between, again, the seraphim, the cherubim, the alien, and the human DNA, right? So I even look at things like songs like Frank Sinatra with Love and Marriage. They go together like a horse and carriage, and look at it. There's the horses, there's the carriage. We're looking at something that the institution of it. And so I'm really interested, like how if you break down the word equus, it relates to words like equity, right? And equity also, you have equities, which is another name for securities, which are basically your stocks, bonds, etc. Right? So there's a whole relationship of looking at this is more than just a fanciful metaphor. We're actually looking at a ruling master archetype to explain how things work. You see how now the whole beast of burden, if you look at, so the stock market of what? Of cattle, right? Chattel, cattle. That's what we are. So you have the difference between like capital labor. And I noticed it's really interesting that the Teamsters logo is two horses put together
Can I ask you
with
a
the
question?
wheel.
Have you ever put presented this on James Bartley yet? Like,
No, I haven't done. You're the first one to see this. I mean, but yeah.
I think he would like something like this. I know you guys
Oh,
do stuff
absolutely.
together, and like because he's deep into ufology. Like he was. I mean, this is like telling the history of the world basically in a metaphorical way that we're
That's right.
seeing. In a ufological way too. Like and because it all relates back to this ruling class of aliens or demigods or gods or whatever you want to.
And also looking at between things like, our modern economies and our legal system and our governments and our religions. This is what we're really talking about. It is so like if people want to think about disclosure, you have to understand it has to be very thorough. We have to talk about more than it exists or something's happened. We have to understand how deep and ancient, and how much it's penetrated our world in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So, because only then are we going to, not make the same mistakes that we've made before, because perhaps another resource, we just didn't go far enough in rooting out the nonsense, you know,
Yeah.
who knows? But yeah, so I look at this whole thing, there's, between law and equity and that. So you got the whole thing with, and it's really interesting. There's all this stuff with mayors, like looking at,
Dude, I thought that was funny. You had a picture of the Teamsters Union. Like I know all about the Teamsters because I have cousins who are kind of, yeah, well, let's just say I know about the Teamsters really well. Like, it,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Yeah, no, it's fascinating, right? Like I think there's a lot to unpack with this, but what I'm interested in doing, because I think it's what Pierre does when he lays it out with holographic culture, is trying to create like a framework that we could use to really actually accurately describe what
well, what I wanted to
this
ask,
intelligence is, and a way that we can do it what that isn't limited, right? Think about the horse again with the blinders. The horse sees what it's told to see,
what I
right?
wanted to ask
we
you,
need to we need to we need to learn how to remove the blinders
yeah,
is the issue,
yeah, I
right?
said. What I wanted to ask you, I got really excited about this, was about the Teamsters. Like, because that goes back in like mafia lore. Like, that's big. Like, like the Teamsters have been associated with the mafia for like years. They talk about it on Goodfellas, but it's not just that. Any local town you go to or someone's sort of connected to the mafia, they're gonna know about the Teamsters. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. It's
Absolutely.
you know, like so. How does that relate, if you don't mind me asking? Like,
So, well, because I'm just saying it, well, that's a typical, I'm just saying, like, it's interesting that if they were like, they're basically, regardless of the politics of the Teamsters, you have a symbol that they chose is the horse. I find that very interesting. If you notice, it's not just sort of a horse, the horses are sort of joined together. And you notice it almost even looks like a carriage behind them in the back, right? Like the same one that we're looking at here when we're looking at these. And the horses aren't just like horses, right? Like when you get into a PR, he's talking about how it relates to like the word Recheb, which is, the Rechabites, which end up being this branch in the Bible that are tasked with this secret task of basically, Pierre suggests, hiding and keeping discreet a UFO that they had been sworn to secrecy of, like they were a secret order. And there's like modern day things of it, like even in modern day masonry, you still have the groups of the Rechabites. They're known in the Bible for not drinking alcohol and that, but this Masonic group, when you look at its symbols, I don't think I have the poster with me right now. Maybe I do. Let me see. I can try to look for it, but um, um, yeah, I can't do it right now, but yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm just looking between all these different symbols, like also getting into this thing on lions. So lions are also related to the horse, um, as being part of the mammal, so that sometimes they interchange the symbol of the horse with the lions, and you see the lions are part of the cherubim, right? Because the lions come from Orion and the Lyrans come from the Orion system. So a lot of this is um, working with other symbols. So the part that I'm interested in is looking at this idea of the lion throne and the lion's gate. Gate gates and banks and things like this that are protected by lions. And what is this portal? What is this door that the lions are protecting? Are we looking at something where the doors are, we have the doors as thrones, doors as portals? So the lion's guardians at the gates, the lion's guardians on the throne, and the lions drawing chariots. And if you look at this, like this is the seated woman of Catholic. This is one of the oldest known artifacts. And it's actually also a reference to Cybele that I was talking about earlier. And
Fascinating.
here, and you still have like the lions on the throne. So notice Queen Victoria is having the lions on the throne. It goes through ancient Egypt. I mean, this whole thing of lions on thrones goes all the way through history. This is not a coincidence. You know, there is
I
something
think,
specific to this idea. Hmm?
I think there was even in the like the Alexander the Great, story. There has something with lines. I'm not thinking of it now.
Yes,
I remember even in the
yes.
movie when he's at the end when he's starting to fall apart, like when he went to India and it didn't fall, it didn't work out, and I think a bunch of him and his troop got like dengue or something. I'm not sure if it's
Oh
dengue.
yeah.
They got something, and he's like almost and then I think that's when they poison him. I'm talking about the Oliver Stone movie. But what do
Okay.
you see Alexander and he has a huge lion's head on his head, like
Oh yeah.
he's wearing like the head of a lion,
Oh yes. Yeah.
like to symbolize. And I always thought that meant just like that he was
Well,
like,
that's sort of that goes back to like Jason and the Argonauts and the Golden Fleece and all of this, right? The magical Golden Fleece. I don't know if you know that, remember that from like
yeah,
the Greek mythology.
yeah,
Yeah. So, and this is like a plate from India with the Indian goddess Hariti on a lion throne with other celestial beings. And again, you have these celestial beings, and they have, there's her lion throne, and it's not really so much as a throne as it looks like a chariot throne again. And of course, we have our snake symbol right there, as to be expected, our sea people down below, but also this interesting thing of the cloth billowing. Pierre talks about how this relates in the different languages to like um, Sapon, a sailor, and it's another motif relating to the wind and the Ophanum wheels in itself. But I can't do it justice at the moment. I'm just going to do a brief overview looking at it. But so you have these things like the eagles. Again, you have these animals flying through the sky, just like you do as a common motif over on this plate over here. There's the lions on the Egyptian throne, lions at the gate of the HSBC headquarters in Hong Kong, the gate as well here in Iran from uh, the time of Xerxes the First in 486 BC.
wow.
So we still have lions
Versus
at
was
the gate. So we're seeing that it's going across cultures, it's going across centuries, and it's going across timelines. And I mean, I think, and we're looking specifically to winged lions. We're not just looking at any old lions. There's a very specific configuration. And the weird thing is like this throne, this is supposed to be a throne in Burma, like in what's called Myanmar today. And they call it the lion throne, but if you look at it, it looks like a door, right? Like the whole thing looks like a door. So I find this whole thing about the
you know
it's
what
showing that the signifier, that the symbol changes from a door to a throne to a chariot. Do you see how it's like working and how the symbols repeat and go in a certain way? So
yeah.
it's pretty neat in that way.
You also see, I
Um,
was going to say, you see the motif of power with the lion because, if we take your example, Xerxes, like Xerxes, for people who don't know, he was the king of Babylon. He was the one who had the famous, where the famous 300, comes from, where the 300 had their stand. They stood up to Xerxes. But what people don't know about Xerxes is he was hell bent on like taking over the world, and he was making deals with like Greek city state officials to like, to hand over their land, and the Spartans didn't want to do that. But then one thing else that you mentioned that I'll take it to another level is, you said there's lions on the front of the HSBC building. What's HSBC? It's a bank. What are banks? Money, power. Going
yeah.
back to this power
Well,
motif.
and I think it goes even deeper, Rob. I mean, you're right. I totally agree. But if you look at it, I mean, you're also looking at with the lions. I'm looking at the two. We're looking at, if we're looking at doors and we're talking about portals, I think it's very interesting that we're looking at a portal, and because we're looking at the something that can materialize or dematerialize, right, through
I
this
love that,
portal.
dude.
And I think the female reproductive organ is a portal. is actually the hint of what we're looking at with especially the female iconography and the female goddesses. We're looking at a portal. Again, going back to Sophia, going back, like all of these gods are just reiterations and different fractal expressions of the same thing told in a myriad of different ways, you know.
Dude,
Um,
Dan, you're fucking brilliant, dude. I love this shit. Like, dude, I love it. I mean, I love sitting and like learning this stuff. Like, I wish, can I have a copy of your note? I mean, I would never use them.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna write my book and stuff and get my proper videos going, but this is just like I'm doing a special for you, Rob, because you need, it's good to get original content out there. So I
Yeah,
look at this thing to continuing to go with for thrones, and there's this whole thing called the baldachin, the canopy of state. And I love, for some reason, I just love these ridiculously abstract ideas. And I'm looking again at the throne and this whole thing about this fancy ornamentation with the drapery behind the throne.
yeah,
And I start looking that there's this common thing of like, oh, carrying a canopy over the king, right? And then I see that it's also big in Thailand, and that you have the canopy. This is the 9-tiered umbrella that's carried for the king. And
wow.
you see it down here like the ancient, like the old king of Siam. But then you also see, this is interesting. Look, Queen Elizabeth being carried under one of these big umbrellas as well.
Jesus Christ, man. How evil was she? You know?
And and it's so interesting because if you understand that this is a signifier of a UFO, this umbrella, this canopy of state, and I'll demonstrate why I say that in a moment, but just keep looking. So you have these different canopies. See, they're worshiping it, and they're worshiping the throne door. And if you look here, this is really interesting. Here's one where they have a baldachin, and look what's carrying the canopy, but cherubs. Of course, cherubs going back again to the lions. So we can see that this whole thing, there's this strong relationship between the UFOs are related to, they always talk about, when they talk about the Ophanum wheels, they're talking about the cherubim are part of the Ophanum wheels. And so I think that's very fascinating that in even the Catholic iconography, again, you're going back when you're looking at Mary, who are you really looking at every time? This is the interesting question with these things, right? We don't know who we think we're talking about. Like, look at Christians, for example. They'll say, Amen at the end of every prayer and stuff like this, right?
I know
But
what that
you
means.
know who Amen is
If you're
referring to,
giving
right?
homage to Amun Ra, right?
Amen Ra. So you're like, Amen Ra.
Yeah,
Okay, you're Christian, whatever. No knock to Christians, but you should be aware of the language you're using and maybe rethink some of it, because some of the people who gave your information on the scriptures didn't give you the honest translation.
yeah.
Um, right. So I find that really amazing. Virgin Mary with the baldachin lifted by cherubs. And so there's this whole thing between this, and I'm going to get into like other stuff with